Greetings and welcome to this edition of Faith to Live By. I'm Pam Christian, working as one who is called and empowered by God to serve as a creator, writer, producer, and host of this weekly podcast, where I seek to help us evaluate current events from a biblical and prophetic perspective, so we, as God's children, know how He wants us to respond. We have entered the time God has been forewarning us of for about 3.5 years now. I suspect you sense the ominous intensity of it all, and I want to help us understand what this foreboding time of intensity really means. Listen carefully. It means the atrocities the enemies have meant to befall God's people are instead being imposed on them. It means evil is in its final stages of this unprecedented battle and is very soon to be subdued. It means the enemy is fighting his fierce best against God's people, trying to cause as much devastation, destruction, and death as possible. It means the enemy is losing. It means God's righteousness is prevailing. Last week I shared I believe the time of God's grace was closing, and I called that season a time for accountability. Now I firmly believe we have entered the season I call the time of accountability, when God will identify each and every one of us based on with whom we have chosen to align ourselves. As God said through Julie Green on June 24th, He is separating the repentant from the unrepentant, those who belong to God and those who do not. I have felt the increase of the spiritual battle against good and evil escalating, and now it's at a fever pitch that I have never known before. And based on what God has said through His prophets, it is an intensity the world has never seen before. Through God's chosen, proven prophets, which includes Dutch and Tim Sheets, Julie Green, Dr. Patricia Green, Amanda Grace, Barry Wunsch, Robin Bullock, and others, and what I have been hearing in common is that this is the time of shaking, the shaking that God has been preparing us for in recent years. Everything that can be shaken will be shaken and dealt with, while all that is secure on the foundation of Jesus Christ will not only prevail, but will be greatly enhanced. We must keep our focus on this truth in the midst of all that seems to be in complete contradiction to this promise. I understand how difficult intentionally keeping faith can be, especially in these times. My own family has been suffering the exposure of evil that has brought serious health concerns that, if not miraculously addressed by God very soon, could easily result in the worst possible outcome. I shared with a dear friend to please pray for my family, and she wrote back saying, "Yes, I will pray. There is something serious going on right now in both the spiritual and the natural realms. I'm dealing with one friend who has just been diagnosed with ALS, 3 friends widowed, several with cancer, one whose husband is suicidal. These are all godly prayer warriors, so I have to believe that it is the enemy freaking out and attacking God's people because we are about to see unprecedented signs, wonders, and miracles." End quote. Another friend of mine just called to ask for prayer for her daughter, whose husband announced he wants a divorce. Another friend of mine just spent the weekend mourning over the death of one of her closest relatives and friends. And yet another friend's brother-in-law is suffering because of defective brain surgery. Because of what is going on in the spiritual realm and what is manifesting in the natural realm, I have every reason to believe you or someone you are directly connected with is inordinately suffering at this time. Truly, we are living in the most intense spiritual battle of good versus evil this world has ever known. And for this reason, we must do all possible to stay fortified in the faith, to unite with one another in the faith. Like Aaron and Hur kept Moses' arms raised to assure the victory in the battle to the very end, that's what we must be for one another. Brothers and sisters in Christ, this is not a time to allow doubt, fear, weariness, or worry to consume you. This is a time we must keep our minds set like flint, stayed on the truth of God and all He has revealed through His written word, the Bible, through His spoken word, the prophetic, and through his living word, Jesus Christ, who paid the debt of sin once and for all. Christ's complete work on the cross utterly defeated the enemy, and Christ has given us all his power and authority over every plan and scheme and effort of the enemy. We have the victory, authority, and power, so we must know this, stand on this, and appropriate this if we want to see God's promises fulfilled in our lives. Amen. We are being bombarded with all sorts of narratives that could bring fear to people if they are not aware of what God has already said about the issues. The past 2 weeks, I brought out the fear-mongering that is being generated by those who promote a one-world order being advanced through the World Health Organization. There are lots of conflicting narratives about many different major events, making it even more difficult to trek through the muck and the mire to find truth. But in the midst of the intensity of the battle and the increase of evil and deception, my commitment to you is even stronger. I ask you, as I share the truth with you, to help you keep your focus on what God has said and the victory and celebration that lies ahead for God's people, to please help others be encouraged and fortified in their faith by sharing this podcast. I've brought out in the past how all the evil threats before us today are intricately intertwined. They each have impact on the other and are intended by the enemy to jointly advance his agenda. World economy, world currency, stock markets, national debts, rising costs, inflation, intentional reduction of food supplies, and more have been used by the enemy to put the people of the world in tremendous financial stress as the enemy seeks to take control of world governments and the people of the world. But remember, God has called the current world financial system the system of Babylon, from which he is working to free us. In fact, God is addressing every area of evil the proponents of one world order are attempting. I hope you have taken the time to listen to my past podcasts on NASARA or GESARA, which is a key component and an effort that is underway to overcome the evil world cabal. While the financial activity we are seeing today may seem like something to fear, it is actually something we can celebrate. Learn how God has been at work through the intricate systems to reform the world economy, world governments, and world peace. I highly recommend you use the links in the show notes to learn from my past podcasts about the history of NASARA and GESARA from Dr. Scott Young, about how God is working to destroy corrupt governments from Derek Johnson, and how God is working to expose ancient evil through the conflict of the Middle East through the history of Israel and Palestine. Again, various world events may seem unrelated, but I assure you, evil has intricately intertwined them to accomplish Satan's evil agenda. Even so, God is at work to overcome every bit of evil on behalf of his people. If you did not hear the podcast on the 3 topics I just mentioned, please know you will get much more out of what my guest brings today by listening to the past podcasts. Your embrace of the hope that is truly before us will be heightened, and your faith will be fortified, helping you get through these very difficult times if you take the time to listen to the past podcasts. This week and next, I will share the 2-part interview I conducted with my guest, Dr. Scott Young, on the topics of NASARA or GESARA, on the topic of how God is working to destroy corrupt governments, and how the history of Israel and Palestine plays a huge role in every bit of this. Here's my interview now with Dr. Scott Young. Dr. Scott Young, it's been a while since I've had you on the program, and there's been a lot happening with world economy, the various banks. At this point, I needed to have you back on to help us make sense of all the reports we're seeing and to give us the hope that we need for our future. So would you start with some background and explanation of why we're hearing the kinds of reports we are today?
We're not all hearing everything. I mean, we know that every election year, there's always crazy things going on in the background. People scrambling to make things up, to make their party look better. And without being partisan on either way, frankly, I don't care about either side because I see both sides being duplicitous.
Right.
And so I would just say we're waiting for the Patriot Party to kind of step up.
Hmm.
And so I think what's occurring right now is everything is out of control. The latest statistics are that the Fed is losing 150 billion a year. And the reason why NASARA didn't happen in 2020 is because we had to get them to a place where they were completely broke. They've lost everything. This is part of Executive Order 13818, where they have crimes against humanity and they lose it all. And so that's the backdrop of what's happening. On top of that, all the companies are struggling. They're overdrawn. Do you know that there are cars right now on new lots that are getting repossessed off of a lot?
No.
I've literally never heard that before in my life. CarMax is actually repossessing cars. Now, they're not doing themselves, it's the bank. So the bank goes off and repossesses it off the car lot. But it is so crazy that kind of thing happening. They're so overwhelmed with stock. Some of the latest figures are that we have more import that is occurring right now than in 2019. And yet, most of the people can't afford anything over their just basic needs. And frankly, they're going into massive debts just being in basic needs.
Right.
Some of the recent stats are that they had 8 to 10% money left over. Now it's less than 3%. When you're that close to the edge, any little thing like a car repair or a refrigerator that goes out on you, which happens. My washer and dryer went out. Those kinds of things tip you over the edge. I mean, you're praying that you can just fix it. If you had to replace it, how do you do that?
Right.
And so this is that planned destruction, unfortunately, of the enemy. And we're caught in the middle of this. The reality is we are sitting in the middle of a war and the whole world is going through this.
Hmm.
But the fascinating part is that the rest of the world is actually doing better other than the Western economies.
I have not heard that. So could you help us understand that better, please?
Right. So Macron just lost out on most of his parties, so they had to put the whole party up. And it's actually changing the euro down. So think about that. The euro goes down when their puppet parties are up, and that tells you how much the euro and the fiat dollar that is all over everywhere, by the way, but specifically in Europe, it's all going down because these puppet parties are going down left and right. There is massive upheaval. Whereas in Argentina, inflation rate has gone down to less than 4.6%. Now, America says that we're at 6%. That's a lie from the pit of hell. We're literally in a range of 30 to 60%. You can't actually come up with the exact number. Prices tell us that we're at a 60% increase since 2020. So when you see that kind of number, and by the way, rates for houses, I mean, I refied my house in 2020 and it was 2.75.
Hmm.
There are kids getting loans with great credit and they're getting 7.1% loans. I mean, that is actually 2.5 times higher depending upon the loan that you're asking for. There are ARM rates that are coming out. They used to do these, and what they are is adjustable rates. And they've been doing this since 2020, and I didn't know about this. I thought they were illegal after 2008. But what they do is they put them in 5-year ARMs. So they buy down the rates. This has happened it's been happening since 2021 when the rates started going up. And so rates at the time were, 6%, but those are adjustable. So that depends on what that rate is. And what happens after a year or two, the rate goes up and the kid doesn't even know about it. And they're actually putting full court presses on these people to get them into these adjustable rates instead of a fixed rate. And that is destroying whole lives. I mean, people go, wait a second, my loan just went up by $900. I can't afford that. I mean, how do you actually turn around instantly have $900 more a month.
Right.
That is toppling everything. And since car sales actually drive sales tax, car sales is the number one driver of sales tax in the budgets all over America. That's what the budget is off of. It isn't off of IRS taxation from the state. That IRS budget that you get when you get it out of your federal and then your state amount, that all goes to the federal government. And they never tell you that one. But the sales tax and tariffs are the only thing that drives budgets. What we're struggling right now is that level of less sales. And therefore, people are fighting. And this is that part of that destruction that we're trying to see.
When I've had you on before, we talked about NASARA or GESARA and how that would be a reset of our economy. I would like you to explain that a little bit, because you start off by referencing that and you're explaining that we're in the middle of a war caused by the evil people who want to have control, one world order. And yet you have been explaining for a number of years now that there is actually hope in the midst of all of this evil.
Yeah, there is. I mean, the reality is, let's put it this way. Most economists were always looking for Q1 of this year, 2024, to see the Fed drop the rates. I told every single person all the way through the Fed was never going to drop the rates. And that is exactly right. That isn't hopeful, but it is hopeful from this situation that they're self-destructing. The actual statistics are we are 30 times worse than the Great Depression. Now, that can make you all upset, or you can realize that they're at their end. And the closer that we are at the end of the idiot cabal, the closer that we are to something absolutely changing. And so some people are so scared that the Great Reset is actually coming in and CBDCs, central bank digital currency, comes in. And the answer is, actually, did you know that Congress and Senate pushed through on bills and said that the Fed was not allowed to use CBDCs?
I did hear that, yeah.
I mean, holy cow, you just basically killed the Great Reset in that. And yet the Great Reset died in 2020 because the Fed is unhooked from the systems. And they're way overspending on all this stuff. And the reality is you don't have to pay it. You never bring the old debts into a new system. And I want you guys to consider something. And I've been working through this kind of idea. But let's put it this way. Let's say you are going to buy out a company. And let's just say your company is worth $1 million. I'm making up numbers, okay? And you're going to buy out another company, and you're going to take, all the files and the capabilities of that company. And let's say they have a $500,000 of revenue. So you're hoping to increase. You're never going to increase as much as they are. You're not going to be 1.5, but you're going to be at a higher rate of sales. That's why you do that. Now, one of the things that you do is you pick a date. And normally you pick a beginning of a month. So let's just use July 1st just for the heck of it. And everything from July 1 and on is Scott's problem, meaning, cost of goods, warranties, all those other things, those liabilities to the company. Now, past liabilities from June 30th and before are all on the old owner. So you actually do this all the time in any business deal. So when you're going from one system to another one, you lay all of the crud on the old owner. If someone walked in and said, I'm suing you, it has nothing to do with the new business owner. They actually, in a legal sense, and they'll actually write these documents down. They don't have to take on the debts, the faults, any of the other stuff of the old systems, of the old company, let's say. And so that's why you set this kind of thing in here. Now, there are, you still have liabilities that you have to take care of. You're taking care of their customer database, but you're only responsible for taking care of them from July on, which means any extra liabilities on them. So what am I saying with that? What we're seeing is that the fiat system of the Fed, at whenever the date happens, whenever that time frame happens, everything that is from the old systems, all the fraudulent nature of the old systems are not allowed to go into the new systems. For instance, election. I can prove to you the 32 states of the Dominion machine states have not been calibrated since 2017, which means that 2018, 2020, and 2022 were invalid elections, full-on invalid elections. Now, in 2020, they actually put a watermark on the ballot, which means a GPS tracker, which they knew exactly what was happening to that election. So even though the machines were invalid, that particular election, they actually knew everything that happened upon that election, which is a turning point that can be looked at. That's why we have to overturn all of those other points of election into the 2020, and we have to move forward and basically, in essence, elect new people. That's part of that system switchover, okay? Another switchover would also be the debts. And we can prove this in a number of ways, those old debts that happen in the fiat system where they screwed people over left and right, whether by the way that they did their contracts, which are so illegal, or the way that they've handled you in the court systems. All of this stuff is not constitutional. And the 14th Amendment under the fourth section says that if debts are sidled upon the people, that's my word, sidled. If they're sidled upon the people and they are international in essence, meaning they're not American debts, you do not owe them. It's a very screwy set of wordings that happens. And this actually occurred in 1868 in the 14th Amendment. It was one of Lincoln's greatest legacy points, as well as the 13th Amendment that freed the slaves. But the 14th Amendment sets out the actual point of which we're going to take over. Now, 1871, they came up with a new law to flip the corporation from the U.S. Constitution for the people to the U.S. Constitution of the people. All they did is changed verbs, adverbs, adjectives, just little weird wordings in there to direct it toward the cabal, which is called the corporation. And so what we're doing is that whatever date that might be, interesting if it was on a beginning of a month, but those kinds of systems, the debts, all of your personal debts, all of the old systems do not translate into the new NASARA system. Now, this is also related to the GESARA people. So all the people in the world are going to be able to be coming into the new system, but the cabal doesn't get to be a part of it.
I want to talk about this a little bit more because you are speaking about this as if everybody's up to speed and everybody knows about the corporation and the change of our government and so on. That's not necessarily the case. People are still waking up to these truths. So let's put it in a nutshell. First off, what does NASARA and GESARA stand for? They are acronyms.
So the NASARA is National Economic Stabilization and Reformation Act. And by the way, they've taken off most of the information on NASARA.
You mean from the internet?
Yeah, from the internet. And on my YouTube channel, if my YouTube channel was just some dumb, nutty dude talking on about something, ridiculous, you just let him go and not say anything. Why do they have to put a Wikipedia page on my screen every single time I talk about NASARA?
Now, so you're making a very valid point. The very fact that we get censored means that we are touching on topics that the cabal does not want people to know about.
Right. And one of the most major ones is the NASARA piece. You see, you can't just bring Trump back in and he suddenly fixes everything. Now, there are people who are wonderful patriots that are kind of coming around to this. And I would say there's just a number of them, but what they haven't seen is the financial system is the cornerstone, the key of this. No, it's funny. One of my favorite guys from an apologetic standpoint is Charlie Kirk. I would love to have him on my show. And Charlie Kirk is a great guy, great believer in Christ. And he says, he'll even say that the Fed is totally messed up. And he's got a point. But the answer is, what do you do about it? And none of them have an answer. Well, guess what? We've already had the answer. NASARA is the replacement of the Fed. It goes back into a gold-backed currency, which is constitutional in the first article under the 10th section. We have to do this. It's because the old systems are dead. It's like having a garden that really wasn't doing anything. The only thing that you do is you till it up. And sometimes you have to wait till it goes fallow, and then you have to plant in that moment in time. Well, we can't wait for it to have a fallow season where the economy just sits bare and nothing for a year. What that would do is wipe everyone out. See, that's what most people are telling you, this fear message, that you're just going to be completely wiped out. The banks are going to wipe you out. And the answer is no, there's actually a replacement. That's what NESARA is this gorgeous non-digital replacement. Now, there is a digital component to it, but every person has to understand we're replacing the Fed with the Treasury. We're replacing the Fed under the US dollar to the US note that is gold backed. And you'll have a physical note as well as, all of your currency that is in your different wallets, meaning whether it's a crypto wallet or it's a 401k or whatever kind of thing in a bank, it'll all flip automatically through the quantum financial system.
NESARA was created by the White Hat military to overcome the efforts of the cabal. But I'm hearing you correctly. You're saying on the day that they were supposed to sign the NESARA paperwork, Clinton refused, and 9/11 was their effort to circumvent everything and keep their cabal going forward. Is that correct?
Partly true. What he was forced to sign it into law. 1 year later, that's when we saw 9/11. So it was in 2000 when he was forced to sign it. And then obviously we have Bush coming into office in 2001, and he actually was the one to take it away. But it was a combined effort of the cabal. And it's not about Democrat, Republican. They're both sides. They're sitting on both sides of the same fence.
All right. So what we have is the White Hat military, having become aware for decades of what was really going on with this dual government, this cabal government that was inconsistent with the Constitution, that was all for a one world order. They have been plotting and they're strategizing for quite a while. NESARA was part of their strategy. So what we're really seeing with NESARA is not just a financial reset, but a government reset and a world economy impact.
Right. And so one of the things that you have to do, you can't just fix the money. Okay. If you fix the money, government officials will jump in there and rewrite bills and wipe it all out from you. Okay. Even if you fix the elections and you fix the money, the court systems will go in and overturn them. You have to fix all three of those phases. Now, we're already seeing the destruction of all the court systems in what Trump is being, you can't even make up the stupid that they're doing against him. And that is part of what I like to call the movie. That's the fake part of it. It's trying to tell everyone in the world, hey, listen, this is ridiculous. This is kangaroo court stuff. And that's the part that he's showing up. And by the way, they've actually tipped their hand under the Joy Behar on The View. They actually tipped their hand, said what they want to do with Trump is put him away for a year, maybe have a 6 months of that, a suspended sentence. But they want to put him in Rikers prison in the New York area, and they want to take away the Secret Service. Well, that's actually a death sentence. If we get to that July 11th point, which, by the way, Elon Musk even put a meme out, a picture of a 7-Eleven with the gas prices at 7-Eleven on the same day that the court systems came out with their idiot rulings. And he had done that a year before, so he just rebrands that. That's telling you the White Hat's going, we already knew the date of this time frame. And so here's the thing. You cannot put the CIC, the commander in chief, in jail. You couldn't even do that to Obama necessarily. You can't do that to ex-presidents. Okay. And you certainly can't do it in the way that they're trying to do this. It is so illegal, it's not even funny. And what that does is it is the maybe, I'm praying, it's that final execution of the governmental systems. So again, you have to fix the courts, you have to fix the monetary supply, and you have to fix the election systems. But you're also taking out these idiots who in these deep underground military bases where they hole up. And you have to, and that is happening all at once, and it's happening worldwide. And so every country is doing this. Now, places like Argentina, who are part of the BRICS issue, and all of the BRICS nations, what's happening on the underground point of this, not the deep underground military base, but the underground point of it, is that they're actually succeeding. They're flipping their governments over. They're going in an amazing direction. That's just the signal. Now, most economists are very hateful when it comes to BRICS because they don't get it. And I believe that what's going to happen is they're going to have to sit down and shut up because they have been telling you the wrong thing. All they dream about is inflation and deflation cycles, fiat, Fed, and the whole systems. But one of the powerful ones that is out there is the Brunson case. When the Brunson case, and it, by the way, it's the most improper way of doing a case. This actually, when I was talking to Loy about this, I said, how come this case keeps coming back up into the ethosphere? Right. And he goes, that's one of the best questions that no one wants to talk about. I mean, normally if you have a case that goes before the Supreme Court, and let's just say it's, X school system versus the people, whatever that might be, and it's over an issue of school lunches, let's say. Once it's decided upon, they never look at that particular topic ever again. How come the Brunson case gets knocked down and gets pulled back in, and it's been pulled back in 6 to 10 times? And you go, wait a second, that can't happen. It's because they're waiting for the moment. Because what the Brunson case does is it says on January 6th, all they had to do is take 10 days and talk about the election fraud. That's all they had to do. And that's why January 6th was a false flag, because they were covering over what SCOTUS was supposed to do and how Congress and Senate was just supposed to handle it. And if they had done that, they would have satisfied the rules of Congress. And because none of those idiots did it, including senators from Oklahoma, who allowed and went along with it, which is James Langford, these are all cabal. And they are under penalty of treason from a military standpoint with that. And so here's what's happening. That Brunson case, when it comes back up, and it's coming back up. And by the way, today is the 20th of June and 21st of June tomorrow. Supreme Court has barricades around them, knowing that something's about ready to hit. And is it time for that case to come up? And when it comes up, it wipes out everyone in Senate, everyone in Congress, all the presidency, and actually all the staffers. It wipes out DC.
Let's talk a little bit about treason. When people are tried and found guilty of treason, all of their personal assets are seized and they become part of the federal government's economy. Is that correct?
So what happens in specific cases is that these tribunals, they already have all the information. This is already set in stone. These are 1 to 2 hour taped events. And so that person, Nancy Pelosi, or pick the person that you want to come up with, she's actually participated in this because she's asked every single question over and over and over again until she gets it out. And if she makes any mistakes, all of the penalties come up against them. These are like basically open and shut cases with this too. But that's why you have to have all the evidence and you have to have it all down. When these things happen, boom, it puts you in your oath phase. See, I can't be counted under treason because I don't have any oath that I did to the federal government. But people who are in a military position or in the court systems or in government actually have oaths of office. And they have not defended the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Right.
And once you understand that point, that puts them into new realms of treason.
Exactly.
And what happens? They're hung. And that's what we talk about Gitmo and kind of things like that. And you have to do this. It's not like a fun part of the process. You have to do that because people who are in government have been running it in a way to only benefit themselves and their satanic roles. And so they've been doing child trafficking. They have been stealing all of our money. They have been stealing the court systems. They've been stealing elections over and over again. And that is a despot type of system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been happening worldwide. And so you have to take them down from all the pegs. And that's why NESARA has taken so long for this to happen. Now, the first target date for NESARA was actually in 2020. And that's why the 2020 election is so powerful. And that's also why everything went crazy from 2020 on.
Mm-hmm.
That's COVID. That's why COVID still is part of the narrative, even though no one believes in it anymore, other than a few of the crazies with that. No even reasonable person actually wears a mask. It's like 1 in a million in essence on an overall basis. But the people that are normally just terrified. They don't have any more information, right? Now, that is the cover for the NESARA piece. And so when you do all of these things together, it is going to be a rush of information. But the reality is almost everyone has heard about election fraud. Almost everyone has heard about the COVID idiocy. Almost everyone has also heard about child trafficking. These three things are immutable facts. That's why I think you have to do one thing, is the EBS, the emergency broadcast signal. You have to tell the people what's happening, and you have to delete the media sources because they're liars. And so once that happens, everything will be done.
All right. So now what you're saying is that once the white hat government are ready, they have everything in place, we should expect to see an emergency broadcasting system override the media that we know now and tell the people exactly what is happening. You'll have to tune in next week to hear the answer to that question. When Dr. Scott provided example of what he called kids purchasing homes and how they were being deceived with interest rates, he wasn't being condescending by calling them kids. He was doing what I so often do, and that is, because I have adult children, I think of everyone in my children's age groups as being kids, when in fact, I'm just old. It was new to me to learn the impact the car's sales has on budgets. Very eye-opening, especially in light of the recent radical drop of consumer confidence in the electrical vehicles, with a preference for fossil fuel-powered vehicles. Since supply and demand is what makes economies flourish, this seems to set the stage for exposure of the climate change hoax and a return to natural resources. If you're interested in a little background on this, use the link in the show notes. I also appreciated Dr. Scott's take on how past elections can be proven to be fraudulent simply by the fact that the majority of the state's Dominion voting machines have not been regularly calibrated. He also mentioned how the evil cabal or shadow government running the United States worked to establish a corporation in 1871 located in Washington, D.C., with a new governing document called the Constitution of the United States of the People, as opposed to the original United States governing document being for the people. I have a link for you in the show notes to learn more about that 1871 corporation. To help you further, I provided links to my past podcasts where the topics of NASARA, GESARA, and the history of the Middle East conflict and the preservation of the United States government using the continuity of government clauses of the Constitution were discussed. You don't want to miss part 2 of my interview with Dr. Scott Young that will be posted next week. Trust me, he brings out even more evidence that the chaos we are experiencing is indeed evidence of God at work on behalf of his people. Before I close, I have even more information about the trip to Greece that I hope to make happen in 2025. We are looking at traveling in the month of October, and I'm interviewing 3 highly recommended Christian travel tour companies at this present time to get the best deal. What I'm looking at is a tour group of about 30 people, a good size to work with, and we already have about 10 people who've expressed interest. We'll be landing in Athens and then be escorted on a tour we can call the Steps of Paul. Each of us need to get our own air travel to Athens International Airport, arriving on what we will consider day 1. Hotel accommodations, ground transportation, and some meals are included from day 1 through day 7, when we'll return to Athens so you can catch your return flight home. We want to plan one night where we can all dine together in a banquet room or some such thing, allowing us the opportunity to worship together and learn together. The cost for the tour is estimated to be about $3,000 per person. Again, that's just an early advance estimate. However, we won't know the actual cost until the details are agreed upon. I would like to have the details agreed upon by the end of February 2025, about 8 months ahead of time, so people can make definitive plans. So, if you think you'd like to be part of the Faith to Live By Christian tour with me in Greece in 2025, just send me an email with the word Greece in the subject line and the number of people that you expect to be in your party in the body of the email. My email is faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com. There is no commitment or obligation from you at this point. You're just expressing interest. And when it comes closer to time to get confirmations, around January or February, then we'll talk about the deposits, the final payments, the travel insurance, and more. Again, if you want me to put together a Christian tour for 2025 to Greece, send me an email to faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com with the words Greece Tour in the subject line and the number of people you would bring in the body of the email if the trip becomes a reality. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. If you like what you hear from me with this podcast, I highly recommend my book series, my award-winning blog, connecting with me on social media where I can cover many more topics than I can with this weekly podcast. Also, consider signing up for my certificate course in apologetics. My aim with that course is to help people learn how to not only use apologetics to share truth with others, but to help Christian leaders incorporate apologetics into their respective ministries so many more Christians know how to share their faith. You know, my whole goal with this podcast is to help people discover and live in life-giving truth and to experience all the hope truth provides. You can, and I hope you do, personally share truth with others. But have you thought about how many more people you could reach by partnering with me? Help me grow this podcast, get my books into more people's hands, and talk me up to others to get more speaking engagements and increase this podcast audience. Then together as partners, we will be making a much greater impact than we can on our own. There are several ways you can choose to partner with me. Certainly telling others about me and my ministry along with prayers is among the top of the list. There's nothing more powerful than word-of-mouth endorsement or personal referrals. Buying my books and products is another way. All of my books in my Faith to Live By series were written to help people better understand the Christian faith and how to successfully live it out. Visit my website and get any or all of these books with a deep 20% discount by using the word TRUTH, T-R-U-T-H, at checkout. I also welcome donations, but for now they're not tax deductible. However, I'm working on that for you, so listen in the weeks to come to learn more to be able to support me through donations that hopefully will be tax deductible. Supporting the businesses I feature as affiliate partners is yet another way you can partner with me. I seek to find affiliates who can offer you goods and services you need, and I have some very exciting money-saving, America First goods and services you won't want to miss out on. I have a new affiliate partner who has amazing products that can help you with a number of different ailments. It's called QE Strong. Using the frequency of quantum energy, their products have helped hundreds of people overcome issues of pain, anxiety, sleeplessness, and more. I have recently conducted an interview with Rob Renee, the founder, and I encourage you to listen to that in order to learn more. Use the promo code FTLB at checkout to get an additional 15% discount on top of the discounts they already provide. Also, if you're like me, you're tired of paying very high prices for cable television, and you've been waiting to find the right company who shares your values to replace your cable service. Well, I found it. It's called Q Streaming. That's C-U-E, Streaming. They provide over 3,000 channels, including live TV with local stations from across the United States networks, sports networks, movie networks, and pay-per-view events. You get all of that for about half what most cable companies charge, and there's no contract, just a monthly subscription. Visit faithtoliveby.myqstreaming.com. Look around and sign up to start viewing the programs you like at a fraction of what you're paying now, all while you are supporting a Christian-owned and operated company that exclusively uses word-of-mouth advertising so as not to spend money on commercial advertisement that supports the woke movement. And don't forget, when it comes to your health, I have 2 different affiliate partners, Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack Supplements and Kappa Health. Kappa Health is dedicated to helping us detoxify our bodies and get to an optimal and healthy weight. I personally love their Java Boost drink, and I think you will too. So check out all their products, and be sure to use my promo code at checkout, FTLB, and they also will offer a 20% discount on all the products. Visit kappahealth.com. Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements contain zinc, quercetin, and vitamins C and D, which are formulated in just the right amounts to help you boost your immune system. Your immune system can be weakened by over 300 different primary immunodeficiency disorders, poor diet, lack of sleep, and adverse reactions to vaccines. I'm personally taking the supplement, and I can tell you I've been around many people who have had COVID and other ailments, and I have not been sick. Use the link in the show notes or go to his website and use the promo code FTLB to receive a 5% coupon discount. And if you choose to become a subscriber, you can receive a 10% discount each and every month. And regarding your finances, I want you to know about Dr. Kirk Elliott. He's a personal wealth advisor. I recently conducted another interview with Kirk that I especially want you to hear in light of the present-day banking system and economic uncertainty. Dr. Elliott offers free consultations to learn more about your personal considerations and to decide what might be a good strategy for you and your financial goals. Call Kirk at 1-720-605-3900 or contact him and his team using the link in the show notes. Again, his and all my affiliate partners' contact details are in the show notes. Of course, you need to do your own due diligence to make your own decisions what to purchase, but to help you, I am researching companies, interviewing their representatives, and using their products or services myself to provide you with any personal recommendation I can. When you purchase my books, products, or services, or products and services from any of my affiliates, you get something you want, and at the same time, you support me. It's truly a benefit for us all. So shop for yourself, or shop to get gifts for friends and family. Your support is greatly appreciated. Again, if this ministry has blessed you in any way, please consider partnering with me and my vision to bring truth to as many people as possible. Consider getting my award-winning books available from my website. The series is also called Faith to Live By, and when you purchase through my web store, be sure to use the promo code TRUTH, T-R-U-T-H, to get a 20% discount on your entire order. I'd also appreciate you letting me know how this podcast impacts you and what you're doing now in response to the equipping you've received through me. My email is faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com. If you like the content and the resource material I bring with this podcast, you'll find much more by connecting with me through my blog. In fact, my blog has been awarded 2 unsolicited awards for Christian content. And I'm also very active on social media. I can cover many more topics there than I can with this weekly podcast. You can also subscribe to my complimentary bi-monthly e-newsletter. As a new subscriber, you can choose one of 3 gifts I offer in appreciation for your subscription. Subscribing will make you a preferred member where you'll receive special announcements and offers not available to others. And by subscribing, should anything happen to my podcast, and the internet is really volatile right now, I'll have a way to contact you so we can stay in touch. To receive even more, please be sure to check out my dedicated podcast listeners page called Beyond the Podcast. Here's where we can connect exclusively, and you can download complimentary devotionals, resources, and more. Depending upon where you listen to my podcast, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google, or wherever these features are available. Your review helps the show reach more people and spread the gospel, and it helps people learn how to better apply their Christian faith. I hope you'll join me next week and tell your friends and family to listen right here on Faith to Live By, where we learn how to gain spiritual victory over life's issues. Until next week, I'm Pam Christian, asking you to remember Christ died for us. The least we can do is live for Him.